Okay, we'll roll call in 30 seconds here, folks. I'd say party at Tony's by the looks of it, but that's not allowed anymore. For good reason. All right, good afternoon and welcome to the November 27th Emergency Advisory Committee meeting. I'll call us to order and we'll get right into it because time is really tight, but I will roll call and start with, this time with Councillor Cartmell.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Councillor Katarina?
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Zadig?
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Essinger?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Councillor Hamilton?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Councillor Henderson?
Afternoon.
Afternoon. Councillor Knack?
Good afternoon.
Good day. Councillor McKean?
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Nicol? Councillor Nicol? Oh, he had let us know that he might not be able to join us for family reasons. So, Councillor Paquette is next.
Good afternoon.
Thank you. Councillor Walters?
Present.
Hello. And Councillor Banga?
Present, Mr. Mayor.
And how do you do? Okay, so that's plenty. Quorum is 1 at this committee, remember, so we have a score. I need a motion to adopt the agenda, which just has the one item on it, but nonetheless, Councillor Essinger?
So moved.
Thank you. I'll just, do you want to do a vote, make sure the system's going, or?
We could do that, yes.
Sure,
Thank
okay. Please vote. You got to be in the EAC for today. There it is.
I'm being told to log back in. This Councillor Paquette, I am a yes.
Noted. Thank you.
We would need Councillors Hamilton and Cartmell's votes.
Yes.
I'm also a yes.
Display the vote, please. There was an update to the app recently.
The vote came up on my screen,
The results?
so I can tell you that it was 12-0.
Thank you, Councillor Henderson. The agenda is carried. The minutes, Councillor Knack.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you. I will move the adoption of the meeting minutes from the November 19th, 2020 Emergency Advisory Committee meeting.
Okay, the vote is up. Please vote.
Yes.
We're good to go, Mr. Mayor.
Display the vote. Carried. Protocol items, I don't think we have any today. So let's dive right into item 3.1, the verbal report.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, members of committee. We have a presentation. As usual, joining in chambers, Ms. Andreychuk, Mr. Aiken, and ELT members are on the call, and coming in shortly will be Dr. Chris Sikora from the Edmonton Zone, Chief Medical Officer of Health. So, over the past 7 days, the Edmonton Health Zone has recorded multiple public health milestones that we had hoped we would never have reached. The enhanced restrictions imposed on November 13th were not effective in counteracting the ballooning infection rates, hospitalization, and ICU admissions in the community. The data trends showed evidence of worsening conditions and the unchecked growth of community transmission. There's more certainty now that private social gatherings are driving much of the problem. The lapses in behavior of Edmontonians, young and old, are causing more pain, suffering, and tragedy. The rate of spread could become exponential and cause devastating harm to health and safety to residents, as well as major setbacks to Edmonton's economic health. The state of public health emergency declared by the province on Tuesday comes with a series of new mandatory health measures that restrict the lives and lifestyles of Edmontonians for the next 3 weeks. The city welcomes the intervention and will support the local actions to shut down the progression of spread and reduce the threat of compromising the entire health system. The new mandatory restrictions are complex and nuanced. It has taken our team several days to understand the implications and the expectations for the organization, for the people of Edmonton and the businesses we serve. Today we will share our implementation actions. We'll also provide an update on the temporary pandemic accommodation for those experiencing homelessness. It's in full operations. Finally, we continue to plan for the next wave of restrictions, and that will mean to the services we deliver. I will close with some thoughts on our view of the immediate future. Edmonton's COVID-19 trend data over the past week continue to be alarming and brought into clear focus the incredible speed of the virus transmission. Case rates, hospitalizations, and ICU admissions reached the highest level so far. The battle to prevent overwhelming the healthcare system and compromise the health of even more Edmontonians entered a new, more dangerous phase. 2 weeks ago, new health restrictions were put in place to eliminate group fitness, sports, and performance activities, curtail late-night alcohol service in restaurants, bars, lounges, and pubs, and it discouraged social gatherings in homes. Municipal enforcement officers and peace officers have been actively monitoring and enforcing business restrictions in compliance with the face covering bylaw. Since November 13th, the start date for the 2-week period of selected restrictions in the Edmonton zone, staff visited over 1,200 businesses and found 97% of the businesses were in compliance with the new restrictions of no group classes, liquor service cutoff, and reduced hours of operation. While most infractions were addressed with education and warnings, some matters were referred to public health for more formal enforcement actions. Authority from the province to use our community peace officers in support of compliance to public health orders is expected. As such, efforts are well underway to align and coordinate our staff with the different regulatory agencies to ensure these new restrictions are adhered to. On the screen is the most recent order from the provincial government, and they did declare a public health emergency on November 24th. The declaration is in place for 90 days, but can be extended. The new restrictions to bend the curve were announced. The restrictions place prohibitions on indoor social gatherings with some exceptions and limited outdoor gatherings to a maximum of 10 participants. Newer enhanced restrictions were also introduced for retail, restaurants, and places of worship. The government asked businesses to allow people to work from home wherever possible. Teams in the city's business areas analyzed the new restrictions and identified service adjustments required for compliance. The second wave planning team identified local opportunities to complement provincial restrictions on gatherings. As a result of that work, the city will advance 5 actions. Administration will work with EPS and Alberta Health Services to activate enforcement teams dedicated to face covering and public health order monitoring. The teams will work 7 days a week and will concentrate on public spaces, gatherings, and worship centers. Consumer fireworks on private property are allowed, but consumer fireworks with a qualified shooter on private or public land are prohibited. Based on the lack of bookings, provincial restrictions related to sports, and limited use by individuals, 22 city operated arenas will close from December 1st to the 18th. The downtown community arena will remain open to support the provincial exemption granted to the IIHF World Juniors. As we continue to get clarity on the order as it relates to arena usage, we will make adjustments as needed. The city's senior centers and St. Francis Xavier Sports Center will be closed, and all indoor events and group activities will be cancelled as part of the provincial prohibition on social gatherings. Effective December 1st, customers will be refused entry to our rec facilities if they do not wear a face covering, regardless of their exemption status. Face coverings can be removed while exercising at a facility, which is in accordance with the Alberta Health Guidelines. The city will continue to provide support for activities that give Edmontonians physical and mental health benefits. This includes aquatics, fitness, and other facilities for individual activities that meet the provincial threshold for capacity, enhanced opportunities for people to get outdoors and enjoy individual activities, Zoominescence nighttime zoo experience, and Candy Cane Lane experience will be restricted to drive-through only. Administration has strongly recommended that Edmontonians limit their non-essential travel by staying within their neighborhood and work routes. We will be encouraging Edmontonians to shop at their local grocery and pharmacy, avoid traveling across the city, or going to other jurisdictions unnecessarily. Pandemic accommodation locations continue to provide important support for our vulnerable population. Approximately 100 shelter beds are available in the system. Capacity at the Edmonton Convention Centre remains at 300 as cots were already spaced at 2 meters to proactively meet the outbreak requirement. Additional precautions are being taken by operators to prevent the spread of the virus, and this includes increased sanitization, signage with distance reminders, and the use of personal protective equipment when responding to overdoses and other medical emergencies. Commonwealth Stadium overnight usage has fluctuated between 75 to 90% occupancy in the last week. Daytime capacity is averaging between 40 to 60% of capacity. Due to the high number of active COVID-19 cases in the community, the mat spacing at Mustard Seed on 99th Street has been changed to comply with the outbreak, and they're moving to 2 meters from 1. This has reduced the capacity to 80 from 100. With reduced capacity, Mustard Seed is operating at full capacity. As you know, multiple shelter locations are experiencing outbreaks or imminent outbreaks. The Edmonton Convention Centre has 5 cases. Hope Mission Commonwealth and Hope Mission Downtown have 11 cases. Alberta Health Services, the Medical Officer of Health, have requested a meeting with the vulnerable people community to discuss an elevated system-wide approach. This may include a designated incident command structure and potentially opening new space for Tier 1, that's COVID-19 confirmed cases, in Tier 2, isolation of close contacts. Work is underway to document the lessons learned from Camp Peckaway and McIntyre Light Horse Park and to draft strategic and tactical plans in order to be prepared for the possibility of encampments emerging in the spring. Our response to the province's new restrictions is one facet of our COVID-19 response. As mentioned, we expect the province will delegate additional powers of enforcement to our peace officers in the coming days, and that'll be followed by training. Administration's second wave escalation team continues to proactively review and plan changes to services and protocols that could be affected by the next wave of restrictions. Our list of possible future actions recognizes the importance of coordination with our regional partners. A consistent approach is more efficient operationally and will facilitate better compliance among residents. As I mentioned at last week's EAC meeting, we're examining ways to synchronize our actions with neighboring municipalities in the city of Calgary. This morning, I confirmed with our neighboring CAOs that the interpretation of the provincial restrictions are consistent, and we are aligned on a number of the additional measures we are proposing to implement. If we are unable to adequately bend the curve in the Edmonton zone by December 15th, there is a very real possibility that the next wave of restrictions could extend through the holiday season. This would be unfortunate and be an unfortunate end to a difficult year. It motivates us to do everything we can now to encourage Edmontonians to increase their commitment to following all public health requirements. Today we sit at level 3 in our escalation model. At this time, we are not recommending that a state of local emergency be enacted by the EAC. We expect and we really hope Edmontonians will embrace the new provincial restrictions and show their commitment to preserving the health and safety of the community. We'll continue to monitor the situation for progress, and we are prepared to bring a recommendation forward to EAC in the future related to a SOL if we feel it's necessary. With that, we're all available to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Speakers list open.
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Who's up first?
Councillor Knack is up first.
Councillor Knack, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for the presentation. So I wanted to start from the administration perspective. I remember when Premier Kenney was talking about the new restrictions, he was asked a question that something we had struggled with last week around what measures are being used specifically to help inform a loosening or tightening of restrictions. And he referenced the R value. And what I'm trying to, I haven't been able to find a public location where that measure is being clearly communicated. Do you have that information? Are you being shared that detail from Alberta Health Services, so you know the daily results on that?
Yes, we are, Councillor. Our meetings on Monday, Wednesdays and Fridays, we get the data surveillance information from the epidemiologist with Alberta Health Services. And they do, in just our last meeting, not today, but on Wednesday, we talked about that R value. And so it is a regular piece of information that we receive.
Is that something we are allowed to publicly, it doesn't seem like I can find public access to that. Is that something we are allowed to include with our dashboard, or just so that we're seeing what's happening on a daily basis, because that's being used by as a measure by the province?
So from our last EAC meeting till today, we've been looking at creating dashboards with that data information to give you a granular look. And so we continue to be in conversations with Alberta Health Services and trying to obtain that information so it can become publicly available. My apologies, I wasn't able to secure that information, but certainly we continue to have those conversations. And as soon as we get that, we will certainly be sharing that with Council.
Well, you mentioned, is Dr. Sikora on the phone for us? So he might be joining?
He will. I did get a call from him late this afternoon that he may be just a little bit late, but his intention is to join today's call.
Okay, I'll come back to that when he joins. I just wouldn't mind asking if they have a spot where they're going to be publicly displaying that, so it can be used more broadly and so we can understand what may or may not happen. So I'll go into just a few specifics then. You mentioned, as an example, Candy Cane Lane is going to be driving only. I imagine that may be hard to require, and I don't think we're going to have bylaw officers walking up and down the lane, I guess. So I'm just wondering, how do we envision things like that being addressed?
So we have been talking with the public health inspectors in regards to not just Candy Cane Lane, but some of the other activities and experiences. And so we do have a game plan to support the notion of drive-through rather than having people, on a narrow sidewalk and potentially gathering to view the beautiful lights. And so we do have a program and a process, and we've been working with our city operations area to ensure that it can run as smoothly as possible, and that if there are concerns, we can address them at that time.
Okay. All right. No, I mean, if that's how we have to do it, I just want to make sure we've went through that. So I think I've understood, and this is still trying to understand all the provincial pieces, as I know you just talked about. So community rinks are allowed to be open, if I understand correctly, and because I know some communities have been asking back and forth, but I think the rules allow it.
Outdoor rinks can
Outdoor
be
rinks,
open,
yes.
but there are restrictions in terms of the number that can gather.
So is that the responsibility, the other follow-up question I get is that the responsibility of the community league to manage? Because some community leagues don't have somebody at the site at all times, whereas some do. So is it the responsibility of the individual to ensure if you've hit that 10-person threshold, or I think that's what it is, that the individual is responsible to not go in and join, or does the league have to be the one watching?
There's absolutely personal responsibility. Our hope is that the league will also take steps to ensure that there's appropriate adherence to that. And I think Mr. Aiken shared with me that they're reaching out to EFCL to ensure that that standards are being shared, because we actually have some outdoor rinks as well.
And I know they want to help. I heard from some leagues saying, like, you know, are we going to get fined if we're not doing, you know, if something goes wrong? We don't want it to go wrong, but they just don't want to be potentially the ones held responsible if an extra person enters when it's really the extra person who's at fault.
So like we have, we'll take an education approach, but I think what I'll alert council that I think we are going to be more aggressive in our enforcement measures. We're at the point where we need to actually make sure that we're doing everything to reduce this. So I'll just prepare all your offices. You might be getting lots of calls related to additional fines if we're not seeing adherence to the public health orders, if we're provided that provision by the by justice to be able to empower our peace officers to do that.
Great, thank you. I'm out of time. I'll come around for another round, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Paquette.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So from our data, it looks like in the space of 2 weeks, the infection rate per 100,000 people has almost doubled. And we're talking now, instead of flattening the curve, we're talking about bending the curve. And that doesn't really inspire a lot of confidence. So I'm just wondering, why are we not recommending state of local emergency when the province has declared their public health emergency? The city of Calgary has declared their state of local emergency. Do we really think that we are going to be getting all of this under control given what we know about rates of infection through the measures that are currently in place?
So from previous information that we shared, Councillor Paquette, during the pandemic implementation in the spring, the state of local emergency provided some benefit, but many of the decisions were made by administration related to supporting the efforts. Based on the restrictions that were put in place by the province, it maybe isn't as far as everybody would like, but it's a strong step. And if we're provided the ability for our peace officers to support in the enforcement, these are measures that we would support. So we don't feel there's anything that's within a state of local emergency that we would need to draw upon.
Okay, so that is a question. Enforcement, definitely a question, especially on transit. But I guess I'm just scratching my head on this. I'll just leave that one alone. Just go on record here that I don't actually agree. So my next question then will be that when it comes to the shelters, we're seeing a decrease in usage. Does it have to do with weather? I'm sure it has to do with a lot of factors, but I've had a lot of reports now of, that things are not really as orderly as we would hope there, and that there isn't really a lot of enforcement of behaviors. And this is driving people away and making them feel unsafe. I'm just wondering if you could comment on that.
Councillor Paquette, Rob Smythe here. We've certainly been working with Bissell and Boyle and Mustard Seed and Bentaro, who are the frontline operators at the convention center. and are certainly well aware of kind of the flags that you're raising. It was certainly challenging to stand up the facility in such a short amount of time. But what we've done is that we have provided some officer presence in the facility on a very short-term, very immediate basis, while the agencies hire some additional security staff and understand how those mechanics are working. We have a leadership committee and an operational committee that is just getting its legs under them at the facility. So there was certainly a challenge with governance, if you will, and the wheels are in motion to manage that. So you're right. There was the initial few weeks that are just beginning to get under the belt of the operators. Certainly, were challenging. The lineups outside, some of the services internally were certainly challenging. But it got people out of the cold at the time, and now we're trying to sort of fine tune the operation within the center.
Okay, thank you. I think it's pretty clear, though, that if people do not feel safe coming to our shelter, we're going to have encampments all over again.
No, absolutely.
Okay, so back to this bending the curve versus flattening the curve. I'm not sure if I'm really having trouble understanding this rationale that knowing what we do about infection rates, why our verbiage has now turned to bending the curve, which basically just means we prolong our experience of this instead of flattening the curve, especially when we consider other jurisdictions that have done enough that in a short period of time, they really clamped down, and now their people and their communities are living life fairly normally. They're able to gather. They're able to do things, and I just don't see us getting to that point with the current approach. And I'm just wondering if you can maybe address that. Are we following the successful models, or are we following? I honestly don't understand what model we're following if it's not going to be the ones that have proven successful.
As we've said before, Councillor Paquette, we're not the health authority. Alberta Health is the health authority. We don't have expertise in that space. We follow their guidance. Obviously, when we see an area of concern for us, we take action, and we have taken action. But in the end, the decisions as it relates to how you manage the health component of the pandemic, it squarely resides with the province.
Understood, and thank you so much for all your work.
Thank you. Councillor McKeon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Smythe, I wanted to thank you for your answer to Councillor Paquette. Let me preface this by saying that the work that was done to establish the convention center as 24/7 accommodation must have been a Herculean and super complex task. There's now a fairly infamous Reddit thread about the problems there from the point of view of one of the patrons. And I also was receiving some information about, I think it was that the convention center itself and the management there were being a little bit obstinate about having to operate the place, and they didn't have security with the proper experience, or maybe even the cleaning staff, the sanitation was lax for those reasons. Is that the kind of information you're hearing as well?
Councillor, very, very, very much so. Our contacts have been with their kind of leadership group, and I believe the challenge was Explore Edmonton senior staff getting that message down to the front lines. But we've circled back with some of those leadership staff, and that message is getting down to the Explore Edmonton frontline staff. I should also let council know, I'm just getting information as we speak, that there has been additional individuals that have tested positive at the convention center. So it is a work in progress. There are many moving parts there. So, and the need to stand up a small isolation room, if you will, or part of that facility, is a requirement there. So there are many moving parts within that building. that agencies are working on. That outbreak, those additional outbreaks, are both in the population who stay there, and also importantly with the staff who work there. Quite significant increase in that issue. So that's a problem staff are dealing with as we speak.
Yeah, one of the issues I heard about, Mr. Smythe, was that the security, the way it was put to me, the security didn't know how to handle the community members, the homeless population, and we're kind of scared of them. And so we're not insisting on masks or social distancing, and there were problems arising from that. And then some people not wanting to stay there because of that lack of established protocols. So I'm glad to hear that. And Mr. Smythe, last question. Could we get an update on those measures, how they've been worked on and improved? Could we get an update at our next EAC?
Absolutely, Councillor. We can certainly do that.
Thank you. I want to go back to you, Adam, because some of the email I'm getting is people are sort of saying, please do, be as assertive as you can on this. And I think we've seen in our statistics from you that a lot of warnings have been given. Well, we've been dealing with this issue for months and months and months now. And I think it would be hard to believe that people don't know that they're expected to socially distance, they're expected to wear a mask if they're going into publicly accessible spaces. So have we reached a point now where, I think somebody could say, oh, I just forgot my mask, let me run out and grab it. That's one thing. But if there are people who are clearly not following the mandatory masking rules, we're being assertive with those people? Question mark.
We are going to be, and as I noted in the presentation, if we're provided those powers for our peace officers, it will not just be the mask bylaw, it will be further than that.
Good. Yeah, no, I think that's really important. And I have some questions about state of a local emergency and why we're not doing it and what that might afford, what benefit that might have for the community. I sort of wonder if, like the mask bylaw, it was sort of helpful to small business to not be the bad guys. We were the bad guys. And in the case of a state of a local emergency, if you did a shutdown, or if we had the authority to do a shutdown, that might even have some economic advantages as far as grants from other orders of government. Any comment on that, Adam?
Councillor McKean, it's Ms. Andrzejczyk. When we looked at the Emergency Management Act and declaring a state of local emergency, we are bound by that Section 19 and the sections in there and what we can do with the orders. And unfortunately, as we've discussed in the past, this really wasn't set up for a pandemic situation, and so we have limited ability around what we can do with businesses. And so as you will recall this year, a lot of what we did was under our normal delegated authorities, and we were able to do it nimbly. One of the things that we've been talking about is under the Municipal Government Act, there is a different provision that provides a little broader powers for municipalities to issue an emergency order, and that also has been delegated through our bylaw, enforcement bylaw to the city manager. So we've been looking at that also as a nimble way to take measures if we need to.
Thank you. I might come around if Dr. Sikora comes on the call, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, I have joined. Thank you.
Oh, superb. Okay, that's great to know. I'm sure there'll be some questions for you. Understand you must be super busy, so really appreciate you making some time for us today, Doctor. Next up is...
I'm happy to be here.
Did you have anything additional to update in anticipation of any questions?
No, I'll continue to listen.
Okay, noted. Councillor Esslinger is up next.
Thank you. And just to follow up with that conversation about state of local emergency, one of the things that we could do, or we did before, was to declare or essential businesses only are open. And I'm just wondering, is in your conversations with your regional partners, are you discussing anything like that?
At this point in time, none of the regional partners are considering that. And that's part of the challenge, that if there is a consideration of further measures, we'd all benefit from those coming from the province.
Okay. And the other question is, I noticed that transit continues to increase week after week, and with the current recommendations that employees stay home as much as possible, work from home, do we anticipate a change in our transit usage?
I think we could see that, Councillor. In the past, what we've done is monitored different routes and made adjustments. I think the other side of this is keeping the existing routes does provide some enhanced capacity, so space, and that would be helpful right now during the pandemic.
I also heard from our discussion with regional partners on domestic violence, the value of having access to public transportation. For those folks in particular, it was absolutely necessary. So I'm concerned we don't shut down too much. Gives them no options.
Understood, and that's not the plan. We plan to continue the current service.
How does that impact what we do at City Hall? Because we still have staff coming in to manage meetings. I assume that's minimally. Are you looking at any changes in that regard?
I apologize, I can't remember the specific stage of City Hall operations, but essentially it's reduced back to what it was in the before the summer recess, where we're minimal by appointment only, and in chambers it's limited to 15.
Okay. I wasn't sure if we were making changes. My other question is for Mr. Smythe. I'm really wondering when, for example, the Castle Downs ice area would be open outside for folks. They like the idea of being able to skate where there's lots of open space.
Council, I don't have that date, a specific date, but it certainly will get that to you as soon as we get that information. And hopefully later on this call.
I also want to encourage you to update the website, because it says it's closed March 5th, 2020 for the season. It doesn't talk about opening dates or consideration, and I'm getting some inquiries, so I think we just need to be clear.
Will do.
My other question is, have we heard any changes to library operations at this point?
My understanding is that libraries will continue to operate as they have been. They're under the capacity threshold, and they are providing the curbside pickup options. So I believe it's remaining consistent.
Yeah, I checked in with the CEO, Pilar Martinez, and she indicated that their occupancy was averaging around 20% now, so they were already within the 25% cap. So no change to operations for them. They're already compliant. Okay, great. Because I heard TELUS World of Science is closed down. Other organizations are making different choices. Those are all my questions for now. Thanks. Thanks. Councillor Henderson's next.
Well, in a more generic way, I know we've been dancing around this question a little bit, but with the state of local emergency, I mean, what power, if we did it, what powers would it give us that would be useful at this point? I'm thinking the reason that we did it in the spring is actually covered right now under the province's regulations. So I'm not sure the point of calling it if it doesn't get us any powers that we would need.
Councillor Henderson, if you recall, when we did do our state of local emergency, we actually made a very narrow restriction to just very few business operations. And then several months later, we had a bulletin from the government of Alberta indicating they felt that municipalities using their Section 19 powers would not be able to close businesses. However, that didn't mean they couldn't do it under other provisions.
Other ways. Yeah.
And that's
Well, and that was really, that was really my second question, because I'm trying to imagine why we would call a state of local emergency if it doesn't actually get us any useful powers.
And in addition, we do know they added in the ability to essentially revoke any of our orders if we felt we were offside. So just sort of keeping that all in mind is why we've sort of landed where we have.
I think the only one, Councillor Henderson, would be if we wanted to start restricting travel. But we need more specific data to know where we should be restricting travel.
And in some ways, that was the power that we did want to have in the spring, and it had to do with the Expo Center.
That's correct.
Yeah. But we're not really in that situation right now. Those powers we would already have under the provincial regulations, I would think.
That's correct.
Okay. So I guess the other question that's linked to that is what other powers do we have? Because I mean, I think a number of us are hearing, from many people that they would like within the Edmonton context to have consideration of things being more restrictive. So do we even have those powers?
For city operations, we certainly do. And
so we could shut down our own stuff.
Yes.
But in terms of actually some of the other things external to our own operation, that's really the only thing we could still look at outside of the provincial power then?
So Councillor Henderson, under the Municipal Government Act, there is a section 551 that allows a municipality to take whatever actions or measures are necessary to eliminate the emergency. And it has a slightly different definition of emergency than under the Emergency Management Act.
Yeah.
The caution with this is it would be something short term as opposed to something that we would be looking for, months, where we may then want to move through a bylaw.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, because I'm interested in the question, and I think the mayor had received a letter that he shared with all of us on this, and the ways in which, and we were stuck in this bind in the spring as well with some of the festivals, that for them to be able to not be financially damaged, they needed somebody else to say you have to stop, you have to close. And I'm just wondering if we've done any analysis of that for some of these businesses that, in actual fact, by us not stepping in, we actually may be making life harder for them.
So thank you again, Councillor Henderson. We've been looking at the federal legislation that just sort of came into effect, and they do have some language around, the public health restriction that needs to be in place, and there's a number of conditions that can be done at a federal, provincial, or a municipal level, and we think we can use, again, that Section 551 of the Municipal Government Act for that purpose. When we look at it, again, most of what they would be able to do for the lockdown support for sure likely fits under what the province has already provided. There may be some areas where we may be able to assist. But we do need to tie back our actions to, a public health restriction.
Right. Okay. And then one last question quickly, and I don't know if Dr. Sikora may want to answer this or maybe ask. I'm wondering if we have, in terms of compliance, we've been, and this idea of COVID fatigue and that compliance may have wavered a bit. If we have any behavioral models of things you can do at this point from other jurisdictions that help on that compliance end, if we've looked at the behavioral models around that, or if anybody's doing any work in that area? Don't know who's the best person to answer that question.
I think it's a good question, Councillor Henderson. I think around what we do hope to accomplish is to direct those activities and those interventions into those areas where we're going to have the most benefit. And certainly the activities related to community, household, and private dwelling are really targeted at changing the attitudes and changing the behaviors, but also enabling people to take and make those decisions that protect both themselves, but also their loved ones and those that are in those specific environments. I think it is a fairly consistent public health approach and a population health approach that has been undertaken since the beginning of the pandemic itself. So we try to enable, we try to facilitate, we try to educate, and we try to take those steps to be able to make it as easy as possible to make the best possible decision to protect health overall, with the acknowledgement that really enforcement is down the road a lot and not something that we typically want to get into, not unless it's a last resort. And I think Albertans have done a respectable job, but we have been in this for a lot of months, and the fatigue probably is setting in. So I think the recent changes from our partners at Alberta Health do serve as a reminder that we do have to be vigilant, but it does highlight that we actually have been quite vigilant in a lot of environments. And I think that does deserve celebration and some congratulations. Just I think we have to be able to focus in on those areas where maybe we have been a little bit more lapsed than we should have been.
Great, thank you for that. I'm seriously out of time. Thanks.
That was helpful, though. Thank you. Councillor Banga?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Questions around state of local emergency. What is the difference between state of local emergency if it's by a municipality or by the province?
That's a great question, Councillor Banga. So it really is who is making the orders and putting the restrictions in place. And so we both adhere to Section 19, but for the purposes of a municipality doing it, it would be just for our own municipality that we would be able to make an order and effect. And so when the province does it, they can do it by regions or areas. So they could do, I think, one of the latest orders from the Chief Medical Officer includes, the Edmonton region. And so that's a little broader than our city. They can cover a bit more depth when they use those powers. So they've issued theirs under the Public Health Act, though, as opposed to the Emergency Management Act. So they're using a slightly different set of powers and authority.
Okay. And then probably question for Adam is, I heard, I guess in your presentation that we're aligned with other jurisdictions. Do you mean throughout Alberta or Edmonton area?
And I said we're close to aligned. There are sort of little deviations, and when I mentioned that, it's related to our immediate region, 13 municipalities. And when I say that, it's as it relates to the interpretation of the restrictions from the province, getting aligned on a common understanding on how those are implemented, and then as it relates to business decisions by the municipalities, we're close to being aligned, but there are some nuances based on different municipalities. For example, as it relates to arenas in terms of closure or non-closure, but I'd say the majority of how we're applying the restrictions and providing the services are pretty close within the region, which is great because we've talked about creating consistency in terms of application, and I think we're getting there.
Okay, and I think this question may have been asked probably in a different context. If Edmonton declares the state of local emergency, do we accomplish anything else than what we are already doing?
Per Councillor Henderson's question, I think the one thing that we could gain from the state of local emergency based on the experiences that we had in the spring is the restriction of travel or limiting travel. Again, at this time, it's difficult to pinpoint where in Edmonton we would do that. But I'm not sure, and either David or Bonnie can add to this, I'm not sure if there are other considerations as it relates to a state of local emergency.
I think that would be the main one, and I think arguably we can probably do that without the state of local emergency just based on our normal powers as well.
Okay, and just to be clear on this morning, Mr. Mayor, sent a piece of communication about the businesses. Is there any validity to that claim that businesses are suffering because we have not declared local state of emergency?
Again, it's difficult. I appreciate the challenges for some businesses. Bonnie has indicated that under a state of local emergency, it's difficult for us to take that step. The other thing I would say is that we've done engagement with BIAs and we're hearing kind of a mix of we need to stay open, we're coming into Christmas season, this is our busy time of year, but we're also hearing the correspondence that you all received today that they're in trouble and they need to tap into the federal program. So as Bonnie said, there is another potential approach. I think I wouldn't mind her to flag some of the risks associated with that if you'd permit.
And so one of the things that we need to be mindful of, even if we use the Municipal Government Act Section 551 for putting an order in place for an emergency that may impact businesses, is if we do it sort of across the board to all businesses without meaningful information to show that we're doing it because there is a public health emergency or some restriction that needs to be in place, we may open ourselves up to further litigation in the future. And so I think we really need to ensure we have the appropriate data and information if we are going to do something broadly. We may choose instead to take a little bit of time and see if the province's orders are effective, and then look at whether or not we need to target certain businesses, perhaps by getting some further information from them as well as to who might need the additional restrictions and steps before we take that action.
Thank you. I'll come back for another round. Time is way up.
Thanks, Councillor Banga. Councillor Walters?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Dr. Sikora, thanks for being here. How are you?
Very good, thank you.
Good. So I'm going to ask my questions of you. Last week when we were having this discussion, there was a lot of questions about the state of our contact tracing capacity, and I just wanted to test a couple of my assumptions. I believe that how much capacity we have to do contact tracing helps with the data that informs the restrictions that we would put in place. So when we have a growing number of cases that are from unknown origin, I presume that's due to a lack of capacity to do good contact tracing. Is that a fair assumption, or can you comment on that?
So the unknown categorization of where individuals did acquire their COVID illness could be related to, I think, difficulties in contact tracing, sure, but also people sometimes just don't know. So sometimes it is a gap in the data, sometimes related to collection, but also because people truthfully don't know what that source might be.
Okay, so I guess it could be more, if we had more contact tracing capacity, we'd have more precise data, but not completely precise data, is what you're saying.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that.
Okay. Is it fair to then, when you look at the cases where we have a known origin and the breakdown of those origins, is it reasonable to extrapolate that across or is it unreasonable to extrapolate that across the unknown cases?
I think sometimes we try our best to do that, and where there are circumstances that point towards a community or a non-household, non-workplace, non-school, non-long-term care exposure site, that often will sort of trip over into that unknown other category. And certainly we do our best to categorize the place where illness was acquired by virtue of either a workplace setting, occupational setting, or other community type setting. And as our numbers have ramped up and our capacities of contact tracing have, of course, been stretched quite to the limit.
Right.
I think we do have to continue to monitor where that location of illness acquisition has been obtained. It may get a little bit more imprecise over time as we continue to have very, very high numbers, but it's the best we have. It's the best we got to be able to help inform what we're doing. It is one aspect of multiple data points that we are overall looking at, pure case numbers being another major one, along with the hospitalization and ICU usage.
Right. So I guess where I'm going with this line of questioning is if you can, somewhat reasonably extrapolate those numbers, that would, I guess, confirm that the large majority of cases are coming from private social gatherings, and a much smaller percentage of cases are coming from, businesses or things happening in the community.
And I would agree with that. I think we do have to honestly believe that when people do chat with our contact tracers, and when our contact tracers have that ability to investigate, that it is a relative minority of time where restaurants, retail stores, and other places like that are somewhat regulated are the place of acquisition. Those are the locations and places where people have been adhering to good 2-meter physical distancing, adhering to the screening, adhering to the hand hygiene and the continuous masking.
Right.
And that those interventions have been good. Where we have seen the broader transmission events are in those household environments, the private dwellings,
right,
our long-term cares as well.
And that's why I'm leading to this question about, calls for further restrictions in those, what are more regulated environments, whether it be businesses, restaurants, retail spaces, some of the community centers, that may not in fact be helpful. And the communication emphasis and resources and enforcement need to be aimed at these private, unregulated settings.
But I think the approach undertaken and announced this week related to focusing on social gatherings is a good one. I think it's a reasonable approach, and it's one that has evaluation built into it. So as mentioned by our Chief Medical Officer of Health, these measures are to be in place for the next 3 weeks, and we'll see how our numbers do from there. And of course, we'll have to maintain that monitoring role of where the source of acquisition is coming from. But it is a measured approach. It's a tempered approach. Focus on those social gatherings. Social interactions and social gatherings should not occur. And that's a blanket principle. And being able to, I think, enable Albertans to go to a restaurant as a core family group with appropriate precautions is still a very appropriate activity, because we haven't seen transmission very often in those such events. Likewise, places where people have something by appointment, like your hairdresser, your stylist, your barber. You're the only one in your bubble with one other person. You're both protected. There's good hand hygiene. There's good screening, and then you exit.
Dr.
I think those are good approaches.
I'm way over time, and I'll have.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's my fault. I asked one late in the game, but I'll have one more in the second round, Mr. Mayor. Just one more. Thanks.
Yeah, I'm okay with erring on the side of caution for answers on any of these points that add clarity and substance to the rationale for the decisions. So thank you, Dr. Sikora, and so to gamify this, ask your deep question of Dr. Sikora at 4 minutes and 55 seconds, and then we'll go the distance here. So we'll call that the Walters maneuver.
Am I the only one that doesn't have a time?
You can. We're here for as long as you're here, Doctor.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'll go next. Actually, one of the other reasons why state of local emergency might have been valuable to us in the spring was in the ambiguity early on the ability for us to issue orders and then do enforcement of our own orders was a strong reason to do that. Not long afterwards, the province in the spring delegated enforcement powers to municipalities to enforce the provincial public health orders. And I understand in the update the province just provided that the Solicitor General signaled that we do have an understanding on municipal peace officers being empowered to enforce all of the orders, including the more recent provincial orders from this week. Is that your understanding as well?
Yeah, just got the email actually from Justice that they've reinstated that.
Okay, that's good. That's not necessarily our core business. I understand one of the things that they were interested in was making sure we had the appropriate training and clarity to do that responsibly. Where are we at on being able to exercise that authority with the appropriate discretion and the appropriate knowledge and training?
So it's our understanding, and we've been in contact with that office today, that when those powers were delegated or are being delegated to us, there will be the accompanying guidelines on the application and implementation of those. And so hopefully we've just got those in hand, so we'll be studying these over the weekend. We've been preparing ourselves based on our previous history and experience, so it shouldn't take us much time to get up and going.
Okay, that's really good news. Appreciate that we've been heard on that. If we could go to the back to your presentation, if we could just go to the 5-step model on this question of escalation and where we're at. I don't know if you can bring that up, but in essence it's 5 steps, and we, by the looks of it, over the last week have skipped probably from 3 to all the way to 5. Is that would be my read of it?
Yeah, that's correct. I think, the blur in between 3 and 4, 3 and 5 is any measures that we would take in addition to that. So we're, as the city, we're at 3, but the province is operating at 5. That's correct.
Yeah, so that's the question about the state of local emergency is, does anything we might do under a state of local emergency, is that superseded by the public health orders from the province at this point?
They can coexist if they're complementary, but we wouldn't be able to take away from what the public health orders have done. We can augment them.
Right, which I think is the question specific to certain categories of businesses. I mean, we're hearing from, and I shared that correspondence that came in today, but we're hearing quite a bit from a lot of the independent restaurateurs who are choosing to shut down right now for the safety of their employees and their patrons, and frankly because demand is imploding because of what's happening around us. So for many of them it doesn't seem to be cost effective to be open. Challenges, what we're hearing from them in turn is that because they haven't been required to close but have chosen to close, they're only eligible for partial federal support, and there's quite a bit of generous support out there, but the last notch of that support requires orders to close, which those categories of business don't have from the province. And really the straight question is, what would we have to put in place, or is there anything we could put in place that would give them the ability to get the same aid that restaurants that have chosen, or have been ordered to close in most of the rest of the country are currently eligible for? I mean, Alberta's leaving money on the table for our restaurant sector is my short assessment of this, but in order to remedy that, what could fix that?
I will start and see if I can help. So the way we've been looking at the federal legislation that just came into effect is the public health restriction would allow them some of the benefits from the lockdown support if the order, the restriction requires them to cease some or all of their activities at the location, and it's reasonable to conclude that the ceased activities result in an approximately 25% of the revenues of the entity being decreased. So it's not an absolute shutdown. There are some possibilities for just some restrictions that would still allow for it. They do have some examples of where an organization would still qualify for the base subsidy, and that, for especially when we're talking about indoor dining, it includes a restaurant that normally earns about 25% or more of its revenues in connection with indoor dining could qualify due to its dining room being shut down, even if it shifts its activities to take out orders to make up some of the lost revenues. So that's where we could use the Section 551, but the caution there, again, is we need to have some justification from a public health stance to drive that shutdown, and we would need that data.
And you know, we'd have to assess that risk, Mayor Iveson, to see, you know, the risks associated with pursuing that, and we could certainly quantify that in more detail. At this point in time, it's just, yeah, tough to give a definitive answer in terms of what we could do.
Okay, I'll have some more questions about that and the data that is available publicly right now in different health areas within the city, whether that would be helpful. But I'll come back around to that. We're into the second round now with Councillor McKean.
Thank you. I thought Councillor Knack was ahead of me, but let me jump in. Dr. Sikora, I asked some questions last week about any data or statistics that might be available probably through Alberta Health Services rather than locally around the state of the mental health of Edmontonians. So there would be, whether there's a data available about hospital visits in regards to mental health crises or addiction, and of course those very stark statistics around suicide attempts or completed suicides. Is that data available, and would it be available to us? I just feel like we're flying a bit blind as far as how Edmontonians are doing in regards to their mental health, and I feel that particularly to be poignant on the cusp of a budget discussion where there might be related services or facilities that we're going to be looking at with a pretty hard edge coming up in this budget. So would that data be available to us?
It's a really good question. I think all of us do have, I think, profound concern around the lasting and the really long-lasting effects of this pandemic to mental health and really our social determinants of health, whether that be education, income, employability as well. There are studies underway, and certainly our mental health services have really responded their best to be able to respond to the increasing pressures over time. Would you like us to put a briefing together for you in advance of our next meeting, Councillor McKean?
I really would. I would think we would all appreciate that, to just get a bit of a snapshot. And if there was any historic data available that would show that there's any sorts of trends during COVID towards measurement of, you know, whether it's hospital visits, hospitalizations. I mean, I know there'd be a lot of psychologists in private practice that you wouldn't probably have any data from them unless there was another way to get at that. But yeah, a memo I think would be really appreciated, Dr. Sikora.
I'll take that away and endeavor to ask our teams to put something together for our council.
Thank you so much. That was the focus of my questions, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Knack, you're back on the board. Sorry we lost you there.
No, it's okay. No big deal. Thank you. And thank you, Dr. Sikora, for joining. I always appreciate having you here and having your expertise. Just before you joined, I was asking about the R value, and it turns out somebody sent me a story that was posted, I think, an hour ago, that it will now be posted. The R value is going to be posted publicly every Monday. Is that correct?
I think in this circumstance, you have better information than I do, Councillor Mack.
That's yeah. Somebody Emily from the Global I think tweeted it, and I just saw it after my round of questions. So maybe my question on R values: do you know? Does it get broken down by health zone? Because I think I heard the Premier talking about using that as a metric to determine when we would loosen restrictions, but do we know, does Edmonton have an R value? Does Calgary zone have an R value? Is that something that's calculated?
I'm sure that our epidemiology partners at Alberta Health are calculating by health zone. I haven't seen anything recently from them around this, but I strongly suspect that it's something that they were looking at on an individual health zone basis.
Okay, I asked because I'm guessing that as any decision to loosen restrictions or for that matter tighten restrictions may at some point have to be split up by zone if one area is performing far better than another, and it would be hard to say, okay, if the provincial number is less than 1, which is what the Premier was talking about, but Edmonton and Calgary were 1.3 or 1.5, that we would want to have a difference or apply a blanket approach to the whole province. Is that fair?
I think that would be fair, and that probably is in keeping with how our partners at Alberta Health have designed the watch status or the watch status list. When we look at either blue categories or purple categories with pure case numbers, those are by region, whether they be large geographic area, health zone, or by municipal quadrants. So I think that does make a lot of sense.
During last week's discussion, I know you didn't have a chance to join, but maybe a question that we had then that was wondering if you have any new information is, now that we know the value, which wasn't a factor we knew before, do you know what would trigger, what measure they're using or what number that would have to be at in likely combination with things like ICU beds, et cetera, that would trigger additional restrictions by the province? Is that something that you're aware of? And I don't know if it's public or not at this stage, but is that something that's been talked about? What's the next phase?
I think that those types of decisions are a cabinet discussion, and our Chief Medical Officer of Health is helping advise in those areas. If I were to glean what extra information they would be looking at, they would be looking at the place where acquired as one of those key things, and should there be extra measures put into place. And I think the description that has been put forward that we're working through this in a 3-week phase with restrictions in social gatherings in some businesses, continuance in some businesses, decreased capacities in others, changes to schools or education in school over that Christmas time period, is reassuring that we're looking at this in an iterative approach to evaluate what is the effect of what we're doing now and what are those next steps. But what those next steps are, I don't know. But I would suspect that they may indeed be things related to some of those things that are continuing to be open that are still open.
Okay, great, thank you. Maybe a final question for Mr. Aitken. Knowing now that this additional piece of information is in fact going to be coming out, is that something that you would be double checking with Alberta Health on, that they'll provide a breakdown to us by zone? Like you mentioned you get the numbers, but is it by zone?
Certainly, we have the ability to separate out Edmonton proper and the Edmonton zone. Yes, we can ask for that information.
Just to help inform whatever actions we're taking. Okay, I think I'm out of time. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Banga? Oh, sorry, Councillor Katarina is on the first round now. I'll go to Councillor Katarina. I'll come back to you, Councillor Banga.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And Adam, I'll ask you the question. We might have this information now, but I can't find it. Do we actually have a visual aid for the Edmonton zone, in particular now with the province and their recommendations? Do we actually have a physical map that we could actually look at? Trying to remember 13 municipalities is tough enough for me, and I'm in this business. I'm sure it's tough enough for a majority of people. Is that available? What is the Edmonton zone boundary? The boundary of it?
It's available on the Alberta Health website. We can provide that link. One thing that we're doing, or in the midst of doing, Councillor Katarina, is trying to create a list of restrictions with all the municipalities listed on it in terms of a poster board, and that we would share that within the Edmonton zone, and that would be posted at all locations or on all websites, so that, to your point, people would know what communities does that include. So we can provide a link with the locations. In terms of the actual communities, Beaumont, Devon, Edmonton, obviously, Evansburg, Fort Saskatchewan, Gibbons, Leduc County, Morinville, Parkland County, St. Albert, Spruce Grove, Stony Plain, Strathcona County, Sturgeon County, Thorsby are those municipalities. But again,
13. Yeah. So is there, for me, it would be much handier rather than the list of names is to actually have a boundary map of those municipalities that I could quickly reference
that's on
myself. I haven't been able to find the link or on the link to it, and that leads me to this next question. And I'll ask you, and somebody else might know if it happened yesterday, and I'm sure everybody with a phone received the emergency broadcast from the province, and asking people to go to websites and links to get the information. I really didn't go to all the links. Is there any way that they could actually, or suggest that they actually publish the information or broadcast the information instead of an emergency broadcast asking people to do something to get information?
Your question is, could they just use that system to share what the restrictions are?
Absolutely, yeah.
While we were talking, I just tried it, and it took me there. But we could take that away to see if that's something they could do. As I said, we are working on a visual or a poster board that tries to make it clearer exactly what the restrictions are and where they apply. And like I said, I'll get our folks to find the location where it visually shows the location of the Edmonton zone, so that it's easier to interpret.
Terrific. That would be helpful for me in relaying that information to those who are asking. Thank you very much. That's all my questions.
Thank you, Councillor Katarina. I just put a link to a map in the chat for you. Basically, it's everything within Parkland County, Sturgeon County, Strathcona County, and Leduc County, including the smaller municipalities and us within it, is sort of the thumbnail, but I sent you a map. So the 4 counties around us is the shortest way to describe it, I think. Councillor Banga? And everything contained within those counties. Councillor Banga, go ahead.
Yeah. And my question is about new provincial restrictions. Some are pretty clear. I mean, outdoor gathering, maximum of 10 people. But some seem to be a little kind of muddy. Let's say the places of worship, 1/3 attendance. Is it posted attendance there, or is it 1/3 of the normal attendance? I had this question come to me.
I believe it's normal attendance, which is not very concrete, but
If I can help, the wording is Places of worship with a maximum of 1/3 normal attendance and held at normal location, including rental spaces like a community hall.
Okay. And my other question was the restricted access to some businesses. What are those some businesses?
Okay, there's varying versions. Are you asking about the ones that are essentially shut down completely?
One they have,
So there's
yeah, that access. I guess they're still partially open.
There are some that are partly open and some that require appointments only. And the ones that are shut down completely, I'm sorry, I'm just flipping here to look at where they are.
So if I might, the businesses that are closed for in-person service are the banquet halls, conference centers, trade shows, auditoria, concert venues, non-approved licensed markets, community centers, children's play places, and indoor playgrounds, and then all levels of sport. And then exemptions may be considered. And then there are some partial closures, some hour limitations on restaurants, bars, pubs, and lounges. Most retail businesses may remain open with capacity limited to 25% of the occupancy set under the Alberta Fire Code. And then businesses open by appointment only. And there's lists associated with those as well.
Thank you. Mr. Smythe, evaluation of our shelter situation. Could you be able to give me approximate percentage of what is the use of our facilities that we created?
Sorry, Councillor, the use of our facilities that we've committed?
Yeah.
Well, there's...
Let's say a conference center, whatever else is available. How do we have any idea if we are using them 60%, 50%, whatever the case may be, or close to 100%?
Convention Center has capacity for 300, but I'd like to provide council with a little update there. Just as we've been on this call, there have been confirmed 22 cases at the Convention Center. And unfortunately, to deal with those positive cases for a very short period of time, they are going to reduce the capacity of that facility down to approximately 165. So I just wanted to inform council of that update. So there'll be, and this is a rough estimate, about 100 individuals reduced that will not be able to stay there. But we believe there is capacity between the Hope Mission facility downtown, which has a maximum capacity of about 380. And they're significantly below that in terms of their current usage. Commonwealth Stadium is the third facility that's providing services to this population. They can take in up to 110. And there is some capacity there. They've been around 90 in the last week or so. And then the facility on the south side is run by Mustard Seed, has a capacity now of about 80. There's also the isolation facility on the south side for individuals that have tested positive, that has a capacity of 65 with an expansion up to about 105. So I just wanted to pass along that information about the convention center that is just happening again as we've been on this call.
Could you send us a copy of this, please?
We can do that, Councillor, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Paquette.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I've been reminded just listening to that everyone is under an incredible amount of stress. And very mindful of that. So thank you. I want to focus on the economy for a second. Right now, I'm a little bit worried about the current measures and impact on consumer confidence. And I'm worried, to that extent, I'm worried about the sustainability of businesses being stretched to breaking at these minimal operating targets. And the mayor's very good observation of leaving federal dollars on the table. So it's clear that we're not following the model of successful jurisdictions. And so I'm a little bit frustrated, and I'm just wondering, you know, is there some way that we can move forward, that we can actually help these businesses to shut down in order to access these federal funds, in order for employees to access federal funds? Because every dollar that comes into our economy is a dollar that we need. And we are not generating enough economic activity to sustain ourselves. And we do need that federal assistance that we are not getting under the current rules that are in place and that we're following. So I'm just wondering, what can we do? Because what we're doing right now is not leading us to where we want to go. It is not a successful path, and we need a successful path.
So as Ms. Andrzejczyk has identified that as part of the MGA section 551, there is an opportunity to use some of the measures in there to look at potential closures. We haven't had enough time to really assess the risks associated with that in terms of if you do a blanket closure and there's some that don't want that, are we exposed as a municipality as it relates to any claims against the city for taking that step? So I think what I've identified is that we can continue to look at that and assess the risks and let council know what the options are related to that potential pursuit of certain industry closure, depending on what's appropriate.
Understood. I will say I'm deeply concerned. I'm actually horribly concerned that our economy is being driven into the ground, and it will take much longer to recover through inaction than the headaches of potential legal exposures by taking action. And tied to this, I just want more clarity, if I can, on the contract tracing, because as far as I understand, there is an enormous swath of information that we simply don't have. If we're looking at a map, there is a large portion of that is in shadow. We have no idea where these transmissions are coming from. Is this not right?
So certainly we have the Edmonton map, and we have those specific subzones within the map, and we do have data on all of those zones and the number of active cases. And so, and we do also have the information shared with us from the data surveillance team in regards to the types of community spread, the community sectors, business activities and actions that would support specific actions moving forward.
But we don't know for sure. We do not have proper contact tracing. So how can we, this is really frustrating. How can we say that we're waiting for data or that decisions are made on data when we simply don't have the data and we have no tool to get that data? And so we are stuck in a holding pattern of inaction. Do you understand the concern here?
I think I understand the concern, Councillor Paquette. Throughout the course of this, we always have had imperfect data, and data is only as good as, well, data will never be perfect. And if we had perfect data, it wouldn't be timely. So what we're working through, and what all of us around the province and really across Canada and North America are working through, is using and acting upon imperfect data. And that's okay, because it's the data that we have at the time, it's the data that we're able to collect in a timely manner with as much precision as possible. When our data and our information from contact tracers, and contact tracing isn't a perfect sport, we certainly do our best to gather as much information as possible, but sometimes people just don't know where they would have acquired illness, and sometimes they aren't willing to talk to us either, and we chalk that up as part of the experience overall. But the vast majority of people do actually chat with our contact tracers to be able to be forthcoming and upfront as to where they would have acquired illness and where they were in their incubation period. And that is something that has been quite consistent over time. So we do have unknowns, but that unknown probably has a fraction that would be extrapolated from other data that is present and available. And certainly we as a system do have to act on arguably imperfect data, but it's the stuff that we have at this point in time. If we were to wait for the absolute perfect data, it would take forever, and it wouldn't be necessarily useful.
Thank you. That's a good lesson here. And I am way out of time. I pulled the Walters maneuver. Thank you.
So Dr. Sikora, that's kind of where I want to pick up now. I'm a mayor, not a mathematician, but the watch list kicks in at 50 cases per 100,000. We are, as of today, I gather, at 511 active cases per 100,000. And in terms of what data is available to us, first of all, that means that in any group of 200 people, give or take, the odds approach 100% that one of those people has a case of COVID-19. And in some of the districts within the city here, when you look at the breakdown of data that is available, the case counts range from 323 to over 700. And in the areas of the city where they're at over 700, that means that you're down to a room of 143 people, which is well below 1/3 capacity of some of the faith spaces, the size of the number of people that might be in a casino. What does the number need to be for there to be the next round of measures to reduce contact among people who may have the virus?
I'm not sure, and I think as we look on what these numbers have been, we certainly have clustering occur. So this isn't a random assortment of where illness happens across the province. So if you have the correct room of 100 individuals, you'll have a certain fraction if those individuals all happen to be from the same household, or happen to be from the same hockey team, or potentially happen to work in the same work location. I think that really brings to the forefront what the measures are designed to be able to stop that trend, those transmission patterns that are associated with the social gatherings. So I suspect that if there are further measures contemplated, it would be based likely on continued spread, really a continued R value that is high, but also continued case counts that are the likes of what we've seen over the past week. And that would be my strong suspicion. So we will have to very carefully monitor in the upcoming weeks what are those daily case counts. And as that watch list counts cases or active cases per 100,000 population, it's hoped that with the restrictions announced this week, that active case count per 100,000 population will eventually come down, but it does take time.
So part of the issue in terms of regional differences, even within the city's different subzones, could be attributed to specific outbreaks. You know, if there one more long-term care center, for example, in one area than in another, that's what's going to affect the numbers?
That does happen, and we've seen that happen in the early days when we had lower numbers than we have now. Yeah.
Okay. So then and the reason I'm asking questions about that data is to try to determine whether it's of any use to us in thinking about are there any further targeted sort of district level measures that we could implement where we're seeing in the data that's publicly available or is shared to us from AHS, whether additional measures might be required at the district level within the city if there are outbreaks or patterns of transmission that are far and away worse in one part of the city than the other, or whether at this point we're in a sort of a general state of concern across the whole city in a consistent way.
That's a great question, and we did start to approach that several months ago when we had lower case numbers. What would be appropriate in terms of a zonal, community-based, a regional approach to helping control spread? And one of the things that we did acknowledge is that for many of these larger outbreaks, whether they be in hospitals, long-term cares, work sites, where this can and does happen, is that workers and people that help support those industries and those locations do reside throughout the entire Edmonton zone. I think at that point we'd made the conclusion that a regional approach to say focus on the southwest corner or focus on the northeast sector of the city wouldn't necessarily be the right approach, and that more of a zonal approach, given our mobility of the population, would be preferred. So being able to have those consistent messages of screening is important, hand washing is important, use a mask, stay home when you're sick, get tested. At a zonal approach is something that does have to happen much more broadly, just due to the mobility of our population overall.
Thanks, Dr. Sikora. Are there any other questions on the second round? Not hearing any, then I've just got a couple more on the third round. Then based on that, and I agree with and have articulated repeatedly that, someone may work in the Southwest but live in Devon or in Beaumont, and so that because people move fairly borderlessly through Edmonton Metro, that we need broader measures rather than really tailored measures at the district level. But when it comes to the businesses that are looking to try to figure out how to access this federal support, that's where there might be a question about additional measures to reduce contact points for a variety of categories of activity, and it might be business and it might be other activity, in terms of movement restrictions, gathering restrictions, or even looking at this not from a public health lens but from an economic development lens. How do we maximize the benefits available to our businesses for aid that's out there? Could we... Maybe it makes it too complicated for us to try to do that at the district level versus at the citywide level, but do we have enough data? I guess I'll ask the question this way. Do we have access to enough data to even think about doing it at the district level in terms of additional orders or measures for businesses?
I don't think there's Sorry, is that a question for me?
Well, sure, you can take the first shot at it, and then I'll ask our officials to react.
I'm not sure there is sufficient data around that to impose further restrictions on the restaurant sector. There isn't a great deal of transmission and illness acquisition that's occurring within those environments. And then certainly, I think we all have to very much applaud our restaurant sectors in being flexible and both protecting their staff, their employees, but also the patrons that do continue. I think our government of Alberta has stated that they do want to enable and continue to have the opportunities for family groups as appropriate to dine safely. But I understand that this is also balanced with an economic development plan. So I'll maybe turn it over to our city administration colleague.
I would say we don't have the data to support at the district level, but maybe at the industry level, that might be the potential opportunity. And so I've just been chatting with Ms. McCabe, and in a way to get that information through our different channels with the business community to see if that's a potential. I think the challenge, and you've raised this regularly, Mr. Mayor, is that if we do it here and it doesn't happen in a surrounding community, we're actually potentially increasing the chance of spread or travel. And I think one of the things that we'd like to encourage is stay local as much as possible. That's in Edmonton, in the surrounding communities, to try and minimize that risk of spread. So I think there's work for us here, Mr. Mayor, that between our business folks and our legal folks, that we could look at what are the opportunities and potentials to enable the community to access those federal programs with a potential closure from the city. But at this point in time, we just don't know the best method to do that.
Okay. Maybe one more question for Dr. Sikora, which is that, and I'm very sympathetic to our restaurateurs, retailers who've done a phenomenal job of protecting their employees of the public. But I want to press you and challenge you a little bit on extrapolating from how well that worked at 50 or 100 cases per 100,000 when every 1,000 or 2,000th potential customer on average might have had the virus and come through the store. I'm not sure we can extrapolate from how well that worked to how well the same measures in a restaurant will work when 1 in 200 up to 1 in 200, and 2 of those people have recovered and may have antibodies and immunity, and 197 of them are susceptible to contagion. As that's the exponential problem with this pandemic. So I wouldn't mind your reaction to that. And again, the question of at what point that math becomes compelling to stop the risk.
I think that's fair. We also have to acknowledge that over the past 3 to 4 months, we've fairly well refined what our control measures are within such environments. So that the hand washing, the screening, the masking, the cohorting are all very, very important aspects to helping reduce spread. So that even if an individual is in that pre-symptomatic time period and may be a risk to other individuals, the only people that they should be a risk to would be their dining family group. And that, I think some of the work that has been a huge amount of effort by both the industries, restaurant being one of them, but also really has a massive thanks to our public communications folks to make sure that all of the public is actually aware of those responsibilities. But yeah, as we do get more and more cases, there is that increased probability that an individual or an individual group will be at risk within a restaurant environment. But steps have to be undertaken to help protect against transmission.
And again, the restaurateurs have been phenomenal about this. So thank you for that. Councillor Banga, go ahead.
Just a couple small questions. Mr. Aitken, one of my questions is you send us that information by 9:30, 10 o'clock. Is it possible for you to send that information earlier about number of cases in the province, in the Edmonton zone, and all those details?
Certainly, I'll do my best to send it earlier, but unfortunately, a lot of the information doesn't come in until mid-afternoon and closer to 4 and 5 o'clock. And so by the time it's looked at and put into that document, unfortunately, and gets its approvals, we're looking at that 7 to 8 o'clock timeline. So I'll do my best to see if I can get that information to you earlier in the day.
Thank you. Dr. Skora, another question for you. It's about Contact Tracer. Could you comment on the success of this app, please?
On the success of which part of it?
App.
The app, the Alberta Together app?
Yeah.
I don't have any specific information about the app itself. It's being supported by our partners at Alberta Health, so I usually would allow them to take questions on that.
Okay, my last question is, in your expert opinion, how far are we from availability of vaccine?
There have been some recent announcements from our Health Canada partners. From last I've seen, Government of Canada has entered into vaccine procurement agreements with just over a half dozen different companies. The initial studies are suggesting that there is good vaccine safety and efficacy, as in it does raise protection against COVID-19 overall. There is a great deal of work underway, both nationally and within the province of Alberta, to describe what a distribution strategy would look like, both from a population prioritization approach, as in which population groups would it benefit the most first, and also how do we do this and implement getting a vaccine into people in a safe manner. All of this is contingent on Health Canada approval of the vaccines themselves, and Health Canada does approve based on safety and efficacy, and that does take time to work through. I believe we will likely have a product in Alberta at some point in the first half of 2021, but that's just it's a wild guess at this point because we're still many people are still working through those permission stages, but there is active planning for a vaccine program in Alberta.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Banga. Are there any other questions? No? All right. Well, then I need a motion to receive the report for information, though there's probably one other question, natural question for us here, which is the next time we're going to chat about this. I think the last direction we had given generally was we'd want monthly updates. I think we're in a little more urgent situation than that now, though. But we've got committees next week and council the week after, so.
And we do have an EAC on December 10th. It's already scheduled.
December 10th. Okay, so that's 2 weeks basically. But we can tack on to a committee meeting or a council meeting as needed Okay, well then, let's not try to schedule anything else on the fly today here, but just understanding that we're going to check in regularly on this in the coming weeks here. I need a motion to receive the report for information.
Also move.
Thank you, Councillor Henderson. Thank you, Councillor Paquette. Don't need a seconder at committee, but appreciate the sentiment.
Oh, yeah.
It's all right. Anyone wishing to speak? Hearing none, we'll vote.
Sorry. If it's all the same, I just want to say that if it's okay.
Go ahead, Councillor Paquette. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to thank our administration for all the work they do. This has been an unbelievable year with unbelievable pressures. I don't think that the stress and the change and the work that has been necessary this year has adequately been expressed to the public. I don't think they have a picture of how much people have given up to keep this city running and will continue to give up. And so I want to just make sure that we're thanking everyone. And we do thank our ELT, we thank all of the folks there, but our frontline workers are bearing the brunt of this on a daily basis. And there's a lot of uncertainty out there. And the people of Edmonton have been doing their best, but the longer this stretches out, the more this becomes a little more commonplace, the more caution starts to be set aside, and the more people get that cabin fever, and they just want to be out and about. They just want to hug their family. And I'm deeply concerned that by taking the minimal measures, we are stretching this out unbearably. There are jurisdictions who have done this successfully. We are not one of them. And that's not on us. We are doing our best with the powers we have. This could be over, but it won't be. I'm deeply concerned with the approach that is being taken that is outside of our hands. But what we do have power to do, we should do. There are many consequences by not doing it. Consequences for the economy, consequences for our businesses, consequences across the board, and of course, the consequences of lifelong health impacts and even fatalities. I know that everyone takes this work incredibly seriously. But if I could say anything, I would just urge that we go as far as is prudent with an eye to just getting this over with so that Edmontonians can get on with their lives. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other remarks? Not seeing any. Please vote.
Yes, for Zadok.
Noted. Thank you.
We're good to go, Mr. Mayor.
Display the vote, please. That's carried unanimously. Okay, thank you, everyone. We'll keep posted on this, and everybody hunker down and stay safe. Meeting adjourned.